Welcome to the Camino Coach Show. This season, we want to bring you insights on peak performance and the mental skills that are needed to perform at your best on track and in business. My name is Craig Muirhead, and I'm the founder of Camino Coaching. And today we are joined by someone who is rewriting the history books, Cormac Buchanan. At just 18, Cormac is New Zealand's first Moto3 World Championship rider. And from his first ever race in 2019 to fighting at the front of Junior GP and stepping up to the World Championship, his journey is nothing short of inspiring. Today, we'll unpack the mental strategies, physical preparation, and life lessons that have driven his success. While you're watching, please like and subscribe. We want to bring you more fascinating chats this season, and the more viewers and subscribers help us do just that. So enough from me, let's get on with it. Here is the inspirational Cormac Buchanan. So we're here today with Cormac Buchanan, who is starting out his first season in the Moto3 World Championship. So welcome, Cormac.
Thank you very much for having me.
And you must be very excited at 18, starting your first season in Moto GP paddock with Moto3.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Looking forward to, I guess, all the new things that there is to find out and the new level of competition, the new bike, the new tracks and countries that I get to go to as well. So yeah, it's kind of like you're just kind of waiting for the testing to start, and you enjoy the testing because it's the first time you just see the bike and stuff, but you also just want to go straight to the first race. So yeah, I'm counting down the days for sure.
So let's rewind a little bit, Cormac. And how did a kid from Invercargill in New Zealand fall in love with motorcycle racing?
I've always loved racing. If it was a running race, cross country race, motocross, MotoGP, whatever, I always loved just the whole racing atmosphere. More so probably just the competitiveness of it and the competitive side of it. Always wanting to, I guess, finish first and be a winner. But as far as motorcycle racing goes, it all really just started at the Phillip Island Grand Prix in 2016. We were there on a family holiday to Australia, and it just so happened to be the same dates for the MotoGP World Championship at Phillip Island, as well as the Speedway World Championship at Australia. And up until that point, my dream was to be a Speedway World Champion because that was the sport that I was competing in. I wouldn't say seriously, but to a really good level in New Zealand. And I remember we went to the Speedway GP the night before Aussie, and I was like, wow, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. This is what I want to be doing and stuff. And Daddy said to me, you think this is cool, you haven't seen anything yet until, you go to Phillip Island because we're off to MotoGP tomorrow. And I didn't really understand what he meant, but when I went there, it's like, I want to race for MotoGP. That's ever since that day, that was my dream. And yeah, every day almost, that's all I've been thinking about to get to that stage. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. And can you remember your first race? Can you remember your first ever road race?
Yeah, I do. It was Wakefield Park in 2019. It was the first round of the Oceania Junior Cup in Australia. So it wasn't even in New Zealand, which is I wouldn't say that's sad, but it's the way it was because I was too young to race in New Zealand because the rule was you had to be 13, and at the time I was 12 years old. So even then I was already quite a late starter in terms of the whole road racing aspect. But yeah, I did a good race from I think 16th to 8th on the grid, and yeah, it was a good introduction to racing. Racing in Aussie, it was kind of thrown into the deep end at that time straight away, and I was racing in there with guys that I still keep contact with nowadays, like Archie McDonald, all those guys. So yeah, it was a cool introduction and a cool start to my career, basically. Yeah.
Super. And New Zealand has a rich motorsport history. Bruce McLaren, Mike Hailwood. How much has a Kiwi mentality played a part in your determination and racing performance?
I think coming from New Zealand, it makes things a lot more difficult, but it also makes you feel a bit more, I guess, motivated. Knowing that I'm the only one over here makes me want to push even harder to be the first one to be a MotoGP World Champion, which is my ultimate dream. So it gives you that extra level of motivation. And us Kiwis, we're tough people. We're hard people. So it's we can't be short of motivation. We work hard and stuff like that. But in saying that, it also makes it really difficult having to come from the other side of the world. But it's been done in Formula One now with Liam Lawson, and and motocross with like Ben Townley and Josh Coppins and even Hugh Anderson back in the the old era of MotoGP, I guess. And yeah, so it's not impossible, but yeah, certainly not easy, but I'm willing to make it happen.
Well, you're making history by being the first, New Zealand rider to break into Moto3 World Championship. So, what advice would you give to a young rider who's setting out and who's got the same aspirations?
Yeah, I think the number one thing that you need is the discipline and the dedication to it. I remember Daddy said to me when I first started that if you want to make it in the sport, you have to live and breathe racing, and that's what I have to do. Every day has to be towards just that one goal, and that's the way that you have to go about it. Obviously, when you're a kid, it's quite difficult because when you're growing up, you have all these parties with your friends and stuff like that that you miss out on. So it's being willing to sacrifice so much just to get even just a shot at your dream. And you also it depends depending on where you come from. Like if you're in Europe where the tracks are, it's going out and riding as much as you can and putting in the time and in the effort. But if you come from New Zealand or Australia or a faraway country, it's about actually having to sacrifice your childhood. So I think you almost need to be knowing what you're in for. But if you're willing to sacrifice that, as long as you have hard work and dedication to that, anything's possible. Yeah.
So in 2021, you left New Zealand to come and race in Europe. What was the biggest culture shock for you, both on the bike and off it?
I think on the bike it would have just been the level of riding, the way that the guys were riding the bike, and the lap times they were doing at those races we're going quicker than now. But at the time it felt like they're going a million miles quicker than I was. So that was the biggest shock. Just you come from New Zealand where you're winning everything. I just came off the back of my third New Zealand title in a row. So I wouldn't say I came in with a bit of an ego or a bit of a cockiness, but you almost do. So you actually had to learn how to lose, and that was probably the hardest bit at first. Um, but in terms of off the bike, it's more so just the fact that everywhere you go, as far as a racer, it's all set out to be a racer. You have all the amazing roads for cycling and stuff like that. You have all the kart tracks, motocross tracks, everything. It's about the whole point of being here in Spain is to be a better rider. And, we don't have that in New Zealand where I come from, so it was just that whole, this is like a rider's paradise. If you're living here, there's no way that you can't be good. So it was, yeah, I think the fact that just everything was so different and you kind of come in with an expectation of how things will be and what they will, look like. But then as soon as you arrive, that's chucked out the window because it's the complete opposite. So yeah, that was the biggest thing. But I think having my dad there to experience it with me was also probably the best thing for me. It made it a bit more fair that I wasn't the only one that was getting that whole culture shock. So yeah.
Funny story that I heard
Oh, God.
about coming back from a racetrack in 2021 Red Bull Rookies, and you were trying to get to the Eurotunnel. Were you doing the map
Uh,
reading that evening?
yes, and it was a long weekend, okay? It was a long, hot weekend in Sachsenring. Europe was in the middle of a heat wave at the time, and pretty much it was like midnight at night. But I had to stay awake because I had to do the navigations for Dad. And I told Dad to take one exit. Turns out that was not an exit that he should have taken. And I think we went through two different countries that we didn't need to then get to the Eurotunnel. We got there in time, but I remember, yeah, there was a lot of swearing going on and stuff like that. And yeah, it was cool because I got to see Belgium for the first time and the Netherlands. We weren't supposed to, but we did. And yeah, I mean, I just fell back asleep and I woke up and Dad's like, oh, we're in Belgium. I'm like, what are we doing here? And it's like, oh, well, that wrong turn that you took last night? Yeah, it's because of this. So that's why it's just easy to fly. You don't have to worry about the driving, the navigation and stuff like that. And yeah, I tell you, I never made that same mistake ever again. So yeah,
You've had enough of road trips, yeah?
yeah, yeah. I'm sick of road trips. Like in 2023, my last year with Dad here, it was very hard because we had our van, a Mercedes Vito, and we drove everywhere. So like there was one part of the season where, so we did testing in Estoril for Junior GP, and then we had to go back to Jerez for the Rookies Cup. Then we had to go back to Estoril for the Junior GP. And we had to go to Le Mans for Rookies Cup, and then we'd have to go back to Valencia for Junior GP, to Jerez for a Junior GP test, then Jerez for the Junior GP race, then Mugello, and then I think we had 1 week off, which was great. Then to Assen, and then the weekend after that was Portimao, and I think it was only Assen we flew to. The rest of them we drove to. So fun times.
So
Yeah.
lots of driving.
It's not as glamorous as it seems. I can assure you that.
You spent a year racing in the British Talent Cup, the first year that you came, and obviously running Red Bull Rookies alongside it. What would, looking back, how valuable, or what was the difference between racing in the UK compared to racing in Spain?
I think obviously apart from the level, that's one of the biggest differences. The guys in Europe, they're the best in the world. And in the UK, the level was also quite good. It was quite high. But I mean, for me, it was really good, the fact that I had more track time, so I was never getting rusty. But also because, where I was placing in the British Talent Cup was a lot higher than when I was in the Rookies Cup. So it almost kind of, even though it wasn't the same, it just keeps your confidence up. It doesn't, you come off not scoring points in Rookies Cup to coming to British Talent Cup and you're fighting for podiums and wins. So it's like, I actually know how to ride a bike, because it's pretty demoralizing when you go to Rookies Cup and you get smoked like that. But, the biggest thing for me was just that whole, more track time, and the things that I learned from Rookies Cup, I could implement into the British Talent Cup, so that when I went to Rookies Cup, I'd be better. Okay, it still wasn't enough that first season, but it was, every weekend I got better and better, and that's what the Rookies Cup staff want to see. So I think the biggest difference between Europe and in the UK is just the level. Also the facilities in the UK aren't the same. You have to be, apart from the kart tracks, like to ride on a big track like Brands or Donington, you have to be 16 years old. In Spain, you could probably be 7 and they'll let you. So it's just, you don't have those same resources and stuff. And I think we found that out pretty quickly. Like every time we're going back to Spain and people are like, oh, what is your plans for next year? And we're like, oh, we think we might do, another year of British Talent Cup. But, they're like, no, you need to be here in Spain because you have these resources and stuff. And yeah, after that first year in Spain, you can see why they're so good.
And also, when it comes to racing, it's not just the physical aspects of racing, it's also the mental aspect. So, do you have any techniques sitting on the grid, anything that is your fail safe that you stick to be able to win the mental battle?
I think for me, it's having my process. It's not like a checklist, but it almost is. It's, I have my warm up and I make sure I follow that, because when you go onto the grid, you want to make sure that you're in the best place that you can possibly be. It's not saying that, oh, okay, if I miss one thing in my warm up, that my whole day is going to be ruined, but it's still being consistent with it, because, for me, having consistency in my process makes me feel better when I'm going out on track. And the last thing you want when you go out on track is to be thinking about, oh, I missed this. And, maybe because I did that, this is going to happen now and stuff like that. But it's crazy how much it's changed over the years. Like that first year Rookies Cup was not, a good year for me mentally, especially when you're getting beaten every weekend. It doesn't help. But it's more so, you need to realize that things develop over time. And for me, that's my process. Like my process, even between 2024 to 2023, was completely different. you know, okay, they still felt just as good when I rocked up to the grid, but they work in different aspects and different ways for me in a better way. Like, even in the last round of Junior GP last season, I changed the way I felt on the grid compared to the penultimate round. But yeah, I felt better at the last round. It was, it's crazy how much it changes. And the thing is, you also, I think, need to be willing to try new things. You need to be willing to almost experiment, because, going onto the grid with a closed mindset, thinking that this is the only way is not how you need to go about it. You need to be, ready to take in as much info as possible. Because yeah, especially in Moto3, it's a chess game on wheels. It's not like it's not like you're just going out and riding a bike. There's lots of things to think about. So yeah, for me, the most important thing is making sure that mentally I'm strong. And I think in a way that's actually more beneficial than the physical side of things. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And that aspect of you having an open mind, and the goal is always moving, isn't it? The goal changes every race, it changes every session. So if you've got a fixed setup and it hasn't adjusted to reality, then obviously your fixed setup isn't going to be very powerful for you.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's also important to have goals for every session. Like before every weekend, we jump on a call and we make sure that we have, every session planned out, like just the goals for that session. And okay, maybe sometimes you might fall short of that goal, but that doesn't mean that your whole weekend's going to be in raptures. It's almost having something that you want to achieve, because I found, especially going into the last round at Estoril of the Junior GP Championship, I'd already signed my World Championship contract, so there was no pressure, but I wanted to have that pressure and have that big goal to make it almost mean something, you know, because when you have a goal, it means that it's important to you, which means that it means that you want to fight for it really hard, you know. So it's, yeah, making sure that you actually know what you're fighting for and know what your purpose for that session is. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it makes a difference for sure. It makes a difference. And Moto 3 is brutal, as you were just alluding to. So, the bikes are virtually the same depending on which manufacturer you're with, insane, speeds and slipstream and aerodynamics and the like. What does a typical day to day week look like to you for your preparation, your training, coming up to a race week, or just every day? What does it look like?
Yeah, well, for me, like I've just come off the back of a 23-hour training week, so it's a lot of training, a lot of hard training, and I think every rider's different in their own aspect. For me, I find that training a lot with on the dirt, if that's motocross, flat track, trials riding, for me, I find that's what works best, because even though it's not the same discipline, it actually has similar aspects to it that can help. And I also find, like, when I train on the road, if I'm not on the bike that I'm actually racing, your mind, it wants to adapt to a different style. So then when you actually jump back on your race bike, you've got to readapt all over again. But as far as, like, I'd say going into a race week, it's a different type of preparation to just a normal training week. Obviously, we know what track we're racing at, so it's looking at lots of old races from that track, making sure that I know what gear I have to be in for each corner, and how I need to ride the bike, because it's almost, you want to paint a picture of the track in your mind before you rock up there. The worst thing I think that you can do is you go out for FP1 on Friday, not knowing, your gears or anything like that. And that means that you've just wasted that first session trying to figure out those things. If you already, go to sleep that night thinking about, right, I know exactly what gear I need to be in here. When you go out on track, it's almost like you've already done 100 laps. So you're already mentally ready. So I think for me, that whole mental preparation for a race weekend is really important. And it certainly will be in Moto3 with 22 different tracks that I have to learn. But yeah, that preparation, is making sure that you're rocking up on the grid thinking that you're, the fittest guy that you can be, and also the mentally strongest guy that you can be, and more so ready for any challenge that gets thrown at your way. Yeah.
Looking at those 22 rounds coming up this season, what's the number one track you're looking forward to riding on?
There's 9 tracks that I haven't ridden on. So I'd say out of those 9, Brno's probably the one that I've always wanted to ride. Also Hungary, the new one, I think it's Balaton Park, or how you pronounce it. It's
Yeah.
also kind of special because the actual qualifying is on my birthday. So it's the first time I ever get a ride on my birthday. But for me, it's more so those tracks that I haven't ridden before that I'm most looking forward to. More so the fact that it's a different challenge, and it's something that I just love learning new tracks. If you ride the same track over and over again, it's going to get boring. Not saying that Portimao is ever going to be boring to me, but it's nice to try new things and stuff like that. And yeah, just the whole fact that it's a new experience to me that I have to learn. But then, going to Aragon's always a good time. I always love it there. So, those tracks, Aragon, Portimao, the real amphitheaters in European motorcycle racing, yeah, those ones are pretty sick.
So, what has been the highest point of your racing career so far?
I think the highest point of my racing career so far would have been the end of last year, the end of the 2024 season in Estoril. Finishing the year with a P2 in the championship, P2 in the race, and then fifth in the championship was, you know, it was the best season I had, the most consistent season. Okay, it wasn't perfect. Had a few, little X's that were on my checklist. But I think for me it was, the fact that it was nice just to put a good season together. I'm not someone that believes in luck, but people say that I had a lot of bad luck previous years. So it was also good to have a season where, things were going my way, but I could just actually show what I could do. You always sometimes feel like the world's against you a bit in the sport. And so to have a year where, things were going right, like I got my first pole position, I got 3 podiums that season, fighting for race wins, all of that stuff. It was a point where you just feel like, you're there now. And also, getting a contract for the World Championship. That was my sole focus for last year. And so to achieve that, it was kind of like, right, this is the highest level I've been in my career. And, I know I've still got a long way to go. So I'm looking forward to making that next step. Yeah.
Yeah, fabulous. And what would you say has been the most challenging, and how did you deal with the most challenging aspect?
I'd say the most challenging year of my career would have been 2021, the first year in Europe. Not so much in the British Talent Cup. That was a really good season for me, but more so the Rookies Cup. It was, yeah, a season that just completely opened my eyes. And to be blunt, it was a pretty poor year in terms of results in that aspect. The only guy that didn't score points in the whole championship was not embarrassing, but it certainly wasn't good for the self-confidence. But the way I overcame that was, Danny Ribalta, the rider coach, and Gustel, they showed a lot of belief. And so, it makes you think, well, if they believe in me and they, actually given me another year, even though I didn't score a single point, they must see something. So it makes you want to find that little something that they saw. And, when I came back home to New Zealand, I had one focus, and that was just to improve and, be a better athlete. 2021, there was not that discipline. There was not that, hard work. There was sacrifice because I was there with just my dad, but the actual racer mentality was not there. So I knew that, if I really wanted to make it in the sport, a lot of things had to change. And that's what I made sure I did for the next season. And, I remember we rocked up to the first test, and a lot of people, they thought that it was just going to be another, 2021 season. And I remember that we finished the first day in sixth overall. And it was like, yeah, it shows just how much hard work can get you. And it's kind of just been like an upwards trajectory from there. Don't get me wrong, the trajectory is not always like this. You'll go like this, but it's always making sure that you can, bring it back up. And yeah, that was the biggest thing for me, just making sure that, I mean, when you come off a year like 2021 with no points, anything, like even just scoring 1 point is an improvement. But it was making sure that, okay, this session I finished 18th, right? The next one I want to finish better than 18th. Okay, this race I finished 11th, right? I want to be in the top 10 the next race, It's just finding those little things that make you want to improve, because it's like those goals. They give you something that you want to fight for. And when you have something to fight for, you're going to ride better because, you have a purpose and a meaning for it. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And you've got to create your own version of success, haven't you? It's fine the guys that get on the podium and have that sort of outward view that everyone knows that that's a successful result, but you've got to create your own version of success.
Exactly.
And it will have a similar challenge this year with moving up. But you've spent every season, if I'm right, in a new championship.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like every year has been a different scenario for me. Like, okay, I did 3 years in the Rookies Cup, but 2021 I did Rookies Cup and British Talent Cup. 2022 I did Rookies Cup and then European Talent Cup. 2023 I did Rookies Cup and Junior GP, and then 2024 I just did sole Junior GP.
Yeah.
And even in New Zealand I did 150s and 300s, and I did 300s sole, only that. And then I did 300s and 600s, and I did just 600s. So unfortunately this year we couldn't make the Superbike happen, but in a few years time it might come to avail. But yeah, it's crazy because people, they look at us, well, they look at the European riders or the riders in World Championship, and they see, right, they've been racing since they were 4 years old. I've been riding bikes since I was 4 years old, but in a different discipline. So it's a completely different, I guess, scenario. My first race was 5 years ago. It's in 5 years you go from your first ever race and then to World Championship. It means that, I guess, my rate of improvement's a lot faster than what it should have been. And that's meant that you've only had to spend 1, maybe 2 years in a championship. I was very lucky with Rookies Cup because they gave me the full 3 years, but it also has meant that we've had to kind of, go from one bike to the other bike. But when your rate of improvement, or I guess when you have to change all these little things from bike to bike, it means that you're taking a lot more info, which makes you it makes you more of a sponge. It means that you're more susceptible to taking in information, and it makes you a better rider. The more info you have, the smarter you are, and yeah, the faster you can ride a bike.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that adaptability and that
Yeah.
flexibility is important.
Mm.
So you've raced against in all of those different championships. You've raced against some of the best young riders, in the world. Who would you say has been your toughest competitor?
The toughest competitor I've had lots of tough competitors. I wouldn't say like crazy rivals because, we're only in the junior categories, but I think the one that stands out the most to me was Colin Via, in the junior GP class. We were teammates in AGR that season, and he was going up to the World Championship that year. He was fighting for the Rookie Cup title, and I always looked up to him, and I always wanted to beat him because he was my teammate. The one person you want to beat is your teammate. But he was just so fast, and he was so good at, like, you look at his data, and it was so almost perfect that it gave you something that you wanted to aspire to be, and that made me a better rider. Like, I remember where I started my junior GP season versus where I ended up was two completely different places. But that's because I had a benchmark that I wanted to chase, you know. But as far as the toughest rider to beat, I'd say probably Piqueras in junior GP that season. It was not like when you're racing with him, he was so fast that he just pulled away or anything. Because you could ride with him easy, but he was just one of those riders that could just in an instant go from maybe eighth in the group to first, and it would be on the last lap, a bit like Alonso last season. And that made me you take notes from that, and you get a lot from that. You see, right, that's what they're doing. That's how they manage races, so it makes you want to do it. Okay, obviously it didn't end up in resulting in a win, but I definitely, learned from that in the last parts of the season last year. I was able to manage the races a lot better. Like Estoril, I was riding in, second place in the group, and I couldn't even, feel tired. I just felt so calm. And it was like if someone passed me, I could just go back there whenever I wanted to. You're in such a good mode and a good mindset during the race. And it's no wonder that they can then put that into a really good result. So those two guys probably stand out the most for me. And also because Colin, we we had a few tense moments, but we're good friends now. But at the time when you're teammates, it makes for a nice little rivalry. Yeah.
And obviously, learning from other riders is key as well, isn't it?
Mm.
For your own progress. If you've, in a new championship on new tracks, learning from a faster rider and being that sponge that can take in that information is accelerates your progress. What would you say would be the one technical or strategic tweak that you made in 2024 that actually gave you that competitive edge? Because you've been riding in at championship in 2023, but 2024 was a step.
I think the biggest thing was the way I approached myself and the way I approached riding. Okay, of course, I was riding the bike a lot better. There's obviously that's a given, but it was mentally going into every race weekend, and it's going to sound really selfish, but not caring about anyone else. When I was the year before, I was always thinking I would be 12th in the championship, and I'd be thinking, oh my God, I'm fighting for a good place in the championship. I was at one point could have finished third in the championship, and I didn't even care about it. I was solely focused on just doing my job. And like every weekend I go in and all I say is, people they'll be like, oh, you want to fight for the wins this weekend and stuff. And I'll say, yep, but I got a job to do first. You know, it's always going into a race weekend, focusing just on my job and also not getting involved with like the silly games, the waiting and all of that sort of stuff. It's, going out on track, trying to do it alone, go out without a reference, trying to just focus on myself. Because I found that when I focused on myself in those qualifyings, the practices, you get to the race and you have your own reference, and then the other riders around you are just mere obstacles. So it was, yeah, that was the biggest thing, just focusing on myself. I had teammates and stuff, but being a selfish racer, which you have to be in the sport, you don't even care about them, you're just solely focused on yourself and your process and making sure that you get the best out for what's for you. Yeah.
Good, good, good. Now you're moving up to Moto 3, which is great, but Moto 3 is the entry level to the MotoGP paddock. So it's an apprenticeship, I call it. Basically, it's an apprenticeship to show whether you can have a job in the MotoGP paddock. So, long term, what's your vision for where you'll be 5 years from now?
Ideally, I'll be a MotoGP world champion in 5 years. That'd be my ultimate dream. Of course, it's a ladder that you have to climb. And like people, they say it's a dream come true, you getting into world championship. And I say no, it's not even close. I say it's a step closer to my dream because my dream isn't to be a Moto3 rider or a Moto3 world champion, not a Moto2 rider or world champion, or not even a MotoGP rider. My goal is to be my dream is to be a MotoGP world champion. So these little things are mere steps. And I think when you think about it like that, it helps you not get wrapped up in the fact that you are moving into the pinnacle of racing. It makes you realize that you've still got a long way to go. Because if you have a feeling or a sense of you've made it now, it does not help you. It's actually going to probably hinder you. It's like you've made it now, so your mind switches off, and maybe that hunger, that drive isn't the same as what it should be. Whereas if you're thinking, I've still got a lot of work to do, you're not going to stop until you get to that end goal. And that's the way that I go about it. So.
Your mum shared with me a piece of paper that you wrote about the goals and the dream that you had. Whereabouts are you on that piece of paper?
So now I'm at step 4. So I've ticked off a lot of boxes that were very ambitious when I was writing them down.
And when did you write it down?
I would have been very young, maybe 9, possibly 10. It was before even all of this started. That was when it was just a dream. Everything was just a dream and an ambition. There was no real, I guess, emphasis behind it. It was like, a kid circling the things he wants for Christmas. I was just writing down what I wanted to achieve. But even looking back, it's crazy. It's almost like I knew how it had to look. All of these things followed in an order. And that order is the exact same as how it's supposed to work. So I'm currently on step 4, and I think I've still got a few more steps to go, but it's a nice little checklist that I keep checking off. Yeah.
Step 1. Can you remember what step 1 was?
Was it something to do with an academy in New Zealand?
It was. It was to be selected for the Moto Academy. Do you remember steps?
Would have been the Oceania Junior or Rookies Cup, I think it was called at the time. In Australia?
It's selected for Red Bull Rookies was step 2.
Red Bull Rookies Cup, okay, yeah.
And the selection is in Jerez.
I think I remember as a kid playing the Valentino Rossi game, and there was this one team that I really liked. Was it the Estrella Galicia team? I wanted to be on that team because that was my favourite looking team at the time.
Yeah, so your step 5 is to join Moto 2 with the Estrella Galicia team.
Yeah.
So you got very specific with your goals.
That team is even in it anymore.
No, it was Mark VDS.
Yeah.
So step 6 is to race in MotoGP, and step 7 is to be world champion in MotoGP and be the next.
Would have been Valentino Rossi.
And is that still the goal? The next Valentino Rossi?
Yeah, exactly. Yep, exactly right.
Well, when we're looking at somebody that had to, realize that his job wasn't finished and keep working, he's a good example of it.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly.
Yeah. So if you were talking to any young rider that's listening to this and has a dream at 9 or 10 years old to make it to the world stage, what's the most underrated skill that they should focus on developing to succeed in professional racing?
I think there's all sorts of different skills. Obviously, you have the driving skills and stuff like that. They're crucial. But I think you need to look away at skills away from the track because they're quite neglected. They're quite, as you say, underrated. I think the biggest thing for me is having that process, having a skill that you can, plan yourself out. You can visualize yourself doing your racing your checklist, your goal setting, that sort of stuff. I think that's a big skill to have as well. Also, it's not, I don't know if I'd consider it a skill, but it's almost something that you just do. I think having that skill of a dedication, having that drive, having that, you know, okay, I want to do more than the next person next to me. I want to be putting in the most effort that I can. Because don't get me wrong, there's times where it does get hard, but if you can have that skill that you say it's still going to be worth it, that's crucial, because the difference between, a rider that is just there for fun and a rider that there and is going to be successful is the rider that just wants to be there and have fun. He'll give up when it gets hard. The rider that wants to be there to be successful, he'll keep pushing no matter how hard it gets. So I think that is probably one of the biggest skills that you can have. Yeah.
Yeah, that characteristic of determination and that resilience, I think, as well, isn't it? It's that
Yeah.
resilience that you've got your true north that you're working towards. So a slight deviation isn't going to put you off the goal
Yeah.
and the direction. Whereas if you're just doing it for fun, then you haven't really got that same direction that you're working towards.
Exactly.
What's the one pre-race process that you would never skip?
Getting stretched out. That's one thing that I can never not do. And I did it. One time I did do it. I didn't do it once, and I genuinely felt like my legs were going to fall off. It was not a mental thing. It's genuinely a physical thing that I must do. Not it helps mentally knowing that my body's all prepared and ready to go, but it also just hurts if I don't do it. And I don't want to feel that pain. But yeah, it's something that I think every person should do before they go out on a bike, because racing is physically, it's hard. It's not an easy sport. And just well, for me, I take about an hour. Other people, maybe it might be 15 minutes of waving your arms in random directions or whatever. But for me, I always have to take the time out of that, preparation to do that. And it makes you feel healthier, makes you feel better. And it also means that you can stick your leg out a bit more going into braking and stuff like that. Do a bit more of a leg dangle.
And if you weren't a motorcycle racer, what would you be doing?
I'd be playing rugby, I reckon. I'd be playing rugby, or, I mean, it's either that or I'd be a barista, a cafe owner. I love coffee. It's my favorite thing. Like I actually have my coffee glass here. But yeah, I'd say one of the things that, okay, it's not a crazy sacrifice, but one of the things that I had to stop doing because of racing was playing rugby, because obviously rugby's a very high contact sport and a lot of risk involved. And I was playing that all as a kid, and then probably just a barista because I love coffee.
So what's the best bike you've ever ridden?
Well, the best bike as of now would have been my AGR KTM. Hopefully, in the next 2 weeks, it will be my Bowie KTM. I've got no doubts about that. That I'd say that will be the best bike I've ridden to date. Also, I enjoyed a lot my 600 in New Zealand. It was just a bike that I just enjoyed riding. It was just, I'm going out there with a smile on my face every time. Even if it wasn't going to plan, it was still just fun. As well, I also think my first bike, the Honda Grom, that was something that I enjoyed a lot. I remember my first time riding it at an actual racetrack. I'd be going down the straight and I'd be trying to get the speedo up higher and higher each time. I think the max I got up, it was like 115. I thought I was going so fast, but yeah, those are the times that you don't forget, and the memories that you don't lose. Yeah.
And what is the dream bike that you're yet to ride?
I'd say my MotoGP bike, whatever brand that's with in the next 5 years. That's whatever bike that is, a MotoGP bike for sure. I like super bikes, but MotoGP is where I want to be. So yeah, whatever bike that is in the future, as long as it's not electric like Moto E, I don't want to be riding one of those. But a MotoGP bike sounds good to me.
So I heard a story about you just passed your driving test.
Oh, great.
And you had a note from the person that took your test. What was the note saying?
It was saying that it was like I was, too hesitant in the car, and I was driving too slow, which is really embarrassing considering I'm a world championship motorcycle racer. And like I said to mum when I got it, I said to her, like, I could have drove like how I would drive if I was on a racetrack, but then I'd probably in prison and I wouldn't be able to race motorbikes. So it's like, I was so worried and so nervous about getting failed that I just rode I was like a scaredy cat, you know?
Okay, so this season we've got an exciting season in Moto3 World Championship. How will people follow you? How will people keep updated with what is going on? What's your socials for them to follow you with?
Yeah, so all my socials are just Cormac Racing. That's on Facebook and Instagram. That's usually where I do majority of the social media stuff. Do lots of posts, and not just on the race weekends, but training and a little bit behind the scenes, which is pretty cool to see and stuff like that. And yeah, you can kind of see what it's like being a Moto3 World Championship rider, the life of it. So yeah, no, I make sure you guys follow me on there for all the updates and stuff like that. And yeah, I always like doing long race reports and stuff like that for you guys to see. So
Super. Well, have a fantastic season and thanks for joining us today.
no, thank you guys very much. It was a pleasure.
We hope you enjoyed the podcast with Cormac. And before you go, we do have something pretty special for you. Imagine your brand speeding around the world on the front of a Moto3 race bike, seen by millions of fans trackside and on TV. You're not just a spectator, you're part of the action, part of the thrill. This is your chance to be full throttle with Cormac. Cormac will be racing in 22 rounds across 18 countries, representing New Zealand and capturing the hearts of motorsport fans worldwide. But here's the exciting part. You don't have to just cheer him on from the sidelines. You can have your logo displayed right on the front of his bike during a MotoGP round of your choice. That's right, your brand on one of the most exciting stages in MotoGP isn't just any racing series. Last year, over 2.8 million fans attended races in person, and every single round was broadcast to 100 million TV viewers globally. This is a sport with a passionate, engaged audience, exactly the kind of exposure that can elevate any brand. Here's what's included in the Full Throttle sponsorship package. Your logo, applied by Cormac himself, to the front of his Moto3 race bike. A custom promotional video shared on Cormac's social media tags throughout the race weekend to keep your brand in the spotlight. Cormac's personal knee slider from the race, yours to keep as a piece of MotoGP history, an exclusive signed photo from the race. And get this, a 1 in 22 chance to win his customised LS2 carbon race helmet. Plus, you'll have the option to purchase exclusive paddock passes to get up close and personal with the action. But there's a catch, spots are limited and the grid is filling fast. If you want to see your brand speeding around an iconic MotoGP circuit, you need to act now. This isn't just a sponsorship, it's a statement. It's a chance to align your brand with the adrenaline, passion, and global reach of MotoGP. It's about making your mark on the world stage, just like Cormac. So, are you ready to twist the throttle and join Cormac on this incredible journey? Email mac@motorsport@gmail.com to secure your spot today and get your own slice of MotoGP history.